Okay, we are live. We are live on the air, guys. I got everybody on the line except for Frank Cullotta. Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. Having a little technical problems here, but we're getting going. Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. Every Friday night, 5 p.m. on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and then rebroadcast again on Monday nights, 6 p.m. on awakeradio.us. And I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman, author of the book How to Succeed as a PI, available on Amazon.com. Okay, now tonight we got a big show coming up. We have 3 guests, so we're having a little bit of technical problems trying to get everybody on the line at the same time. We have former Las Vegas mobster Frank Cullotta. Now he's the author of Hole in the Wall Gang and a couple of books. We're going to get to that. But Frank was part of the Tony Spilotro gang from the movie Casino. We also have with us tonight Dennis N. Griffin, who's a former cop and he's a former PI, and he's the author of Cullotta, Life, Chicago Criminal, Las Vegas Mobster, and Government Witness. I got all the links to these books up on my blog, The Opperman Report. We also have Robert George Allen, who was the last one to join us on the call tonight because we were having a little bit of Skype trouble, but we got him here. And he runs the Las Vegas Mob Tour and the Mob Convention, which is going to be a big convention of famous mobsters and wise guys and cops and feds and prosecutors all in one room, all duking it out. And all you can meet them, you can greet with them, they'll sign books for you. And we got all this. So let's start off. I'm still going to keep trying to get Frank Cullotta, and I'm having a little trouble getting him. But why don't we start off with the... there we go. We got him. Frank, you on? Not yet. Okay, let's start off here with Robert George Allen. Robert, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little about the convention and the tour and all that kind of stuff you do?
Sure. My name is Robert George Allen. I was a stand-up comedian in town for over 40 years. Worked the Follies Bergère and many, many other shows. When I retired, I started the Haunted Vegas tours and the Vegas Mob tours, which we still have running. And then our recent tour we started is Cullotta, Frank Cullotta's tour, the Casino tour, which is the real story behind the movie. That's our latest tour. And then we have Mob Con. It's Mob-Con. Which is a mob convention here in town. We actually have former hitmen, loan sharks, mafia guys, along with former FBI, CIA, and Metro people. So it's they're all in one room, and they all get along, believe it or not.
Yeah, no, I bet they do, because it's not like when you're off the clock, everybody kind of hangs out with each other.
Right.
But now let me ask you, what if somebody wants to book a tour? How do they get a hold of you?
Well, they can call our 800 number, 866-218-4935.
And you got a website?
866-218-4935.
Okay, great. Okay, so now why don't you tell us a little bit about these guests tonight, because you're going to have both of these guys down at the Mob Convention. Do you want to give us a little bio on Frank Cullotta and on Denny Griffin?
Sure. I was, as I said, I was doing the Haunted Vegas tours for a number of years. And I kept getting people saying, well, why don't you, tell us about the mob? Are they still here while I was doing the tour? So my wife said, they keep asking about the mob. Why don't you do a mob tour? Well, I wasn't real sure how to get one started. And just by luck or serendipity, it just happened. I picked up the newspaper one Sunday, and there was a whole article about where the mob used to live in their old houses. And, there was a guy that wrote a book about it, and that was Denny Griffin. And it was about Frank Cullotta and Dennis Arnoldy, the FBI agent. So I thought it was very interesting. So I contacted them and said, I'm interested in doing a mob tour. And they said, believe it or not, so are we. We've been trying to figure out how to do it. So we all met for coffee. And then after a few times of meeting for coffee, they introduced me to Frank, who also came to dinner one night. And we liked everything we were talking about. We were all on the same page. So we started the Vegas mob tours about 7 years ago.
Okay, great. Hey, so Frank, are you on the line?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Frank, it's nice to meet you. Now, you're the actual one of the guys from the Hole in the Wall gang from the movie Casino, right?
That's correct.
So why don't you give us a little short description, a little short bio about yourself, and then we'll have Denny give a little short bio, and then we'll get into the whole story about your life.
Well, my name is Frank Cullotta, and I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. And at a young age, I was involved with the Chicago Outfit, which is a criminal organization. We call it the Chicago Outfit because we didn't want to refer to it as the syndicate or the mafia. And in the late 70s, I was told I had to move to Las Vegas to be Tony's right-hand man, Tony Spilotro, and what my functions were going to be. In other words, I was going to watch his back, make sure nobody would hurt him or try to muscle him or whatever it was, and sort of look out for the casino's interests as far as cheaters go and getting people jobs into casinos. I had nothing to do with the skim, although I knew it was going on. That wasn't what I was supposed to do. And that's basically what brought me to Las Vegas.
Okay, so we'll get into your whole story in more detail as we move on. So now, Denny, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about your life as a cop and all the books you've written?
Yes, thanks, Ed. My name's Denny Griffin. I'm retired from 20-plus years in law enforcement and investigations. And in 1994, I took up a second career as a writer. And I started out writing fiction, mystery thrillers. And I was on the verge of hanging up my typewriter because I was kind of treading water when at a writer's conference, one of the instructors suggested I switch to true crime and use my background in investigations and law enforcement to write true crime stories, police history, and so forth. So that was in 2002. I did that, and I've been on a true crime writer ever since, and I think I found my niche.
Yeah, I think so too. Now, you wrote a book with my buddy Vito Colucci.
Absolutely. Roadtown, yes.
Yeah, Vito's been on the show here, and I was a guest on his show as well.
Good, yes. He had quite a story to tell as well.
Yeah, that is. Are you going to be part of Roguetown too?
I don't know where that's coming from. I've semi-retired again, so I'm trying to cut back.
Okay, yeah, because I think he wants to do he has a whole bunch of people came to him with more stories about Connecticut over there and all the drug dealing that was going on in the police department back in those days, and he wants to do another book. So I'm looking forward to that. So now, Frank. I've been listening to some interviews that you've been doing, and I'm familiar with your story. And one thing that struck me is that your dad died when you were 8 years old. And it seems that from that time on, your whole childhood was spent in reformatories and like youth prison type situations.
That's true. That's true. I started out in juvenile home, went to parental school. And by the time I was 16, I wound up in a place they called it St. Charles. It was up for bad boys. And then after that, I went to the House of Correction because I became of age. I was like 18. So now I was with the men because I was a man. And I spent 2 bits in the House of Correction, different times. And then from there, I did time at the Cook County Jail in Illinois, in and out of that. You know, it's just a holding place until they process you and find you guilty or let you go. And then I wound up going to the state penitentiary, Stateville Penitentiary in Illinois, Lockport, Illinois. And then from there I was transferred over to the federal institution in in Terre Haute, Indiana. So that's my criminal career in jail.
But now that was all before you even got to Vegas.
Oh, yeah, all before I got to Vegas.
Well, how much time have you done altogether?
Close to 10 years, give or take a few, a year or two, but close to 10 years. Okay. The longest I did at one time was 6 actual calendar years straight. That total conviction that time was between the state and the government, and I had a sentence of 36 years. What they did was they run all them years together, and it went to the highest amount of time I had with the state, which was 15 years. So they run it concurrently, and when I got paroled from the state, I went over to the federal detainer, which was a 10-year sentence. So a max on a 10-year sentence at that time was 6 years. Let's say I got just plain lucky.
Yeah, it sounds like it could have been 36.
Well, if they run them wild, but the government was the last one to do the conviction, so the government supersedes the state, so they just drew it all in.
Okay, but all that was while you were in Chicago. And in Chicago, besides doing all your crime and stuff like that, you had a lot of businesses as well. You had a nightclub and stuff.
I guess you've done your homework. You're right.
Oh yeah, I don't fool around.
I did. When I first got out of prison, and before I went to prison, I owned gas stations, I owned restaurants, and then when I got out of prison, I started another service station and another a beef stand, which was right across the street from Wrigley Field. As a matter of fact, I owned the property there, right in the corner. If I owned it today, I'd be worth about $50 million. I bought the property for $30,000 at the time. Let's say I muscled a guy, and I wound up with the property for $30,000. And we built a restaurant on the property. And then I wound up once the police knew that I had the place, they kept on harassing me over there. Even I was trying to be legit, actually, and they kept on harassing me. So I sold the place, and I opened up a disco in Schiller Park, Illinois. Actually, it would be River Grove. The suburbs are all very close together. And was doing rather well there. We called it Spanky's Discotheque. And it was, the Spanky's Art Gang Comedy.
Sure.
And I had a partner. And before I took that place over, the place was owned by 3 people. And one of the owners was Joe Pepitone. Has you ever heard of Joe Pepitone, New York Yankee baseball player?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, back in Staten Island, my neighbors were related to Joe Pepitone.
Yeah, well, Joe was a partner in the place, and they called it the Silver Slipper. And the guy that his name was on the license, his name was Dino. I don't want to go on. He's passed away, but Dino was his name. And he approached me, and he said, we're not doing that good because Joe does a lot of coke. The other guy's never here. The other guy, one guy owned a greeting card company, and the other guy owned a company that sold frames for eyeglasses. So these were money guys. So Dino said, before you show interest in it and you are going to buy it, he said, I have to tell you one thing. So I waited a week and I said, yeah, I'll take the place, but it's all I'm going to do is give him 15G. And he said, that's it? I said, yeah, 15G or I run him out. And then he says, I wanted to tell you that the outfit's got their hand on in here in the pie. We're giving them $1,600 a week for protection money. And I said, not a problem. I said, I can straighten that out real quick. So I called Tony Spilotro and I told him what I wanted to do. And he told me to get a hold of Joe Lombardo, who was our boss at the time. They called him the Clown. We didn't call him the Clown to his face, nor did anybody else. And Joe says, don't worry about it. I'll straighten it out right away. And he did. He straightened it out right away. The guy who had the place on a muscle, his name was Louis Ebele. They used to call him Lou the Mooch. So I took over the place, and Louis wasn't very happy about it. He more or less told me, but he didn't tell me in a bad way. He just said, you took away $1,600 a week from me. And, I didn't say anything back. I said, well, I'll leave your pinball machines in there. You can keep the money out of them. So we were doing quite well there. And then one day my partner decided he wanted to have a Las Vegas night. And I said, you better get the proper licensing. He did. He had all the permits and everything, and he advertised it, promoted it, put a big sign on the front of the building. Now, mind you, we didn't need a Las Vegas night because we were raking in some big money. And we got raided that night. So when we got raided, there were several guys in the place, and guys that were connected along with me. They arrested 60 people along with me, but let the other guys go, the connected guys. And we all looked at each other. What? Somebody's got a hard on for me. It has to be. So I made bond for the 60 customers there went there. Made bond for everybody, actually. And we had a court date, and I hired an attorney. One attorney was going to handle it all. So we went to this little rinky-dinky courthouse out there in River Grove, and we caught the cop. Tell him what he just testified to on the stand to another policeman. You're not supposed to share that information. And he did. and we caught him. And of course, that was probably all set up. We paid a lot of money, and I paid a lot of money. And we beat the case. They threw it out. Well, then from then on, there was so much heat on the place. You couldn't make no money. And then I was getting told by Joe Lombardo and Tony Spilotro they needed me in Vegas, and one thing led to another. So I decided, I better go out there because they were whacking a lot of guys about that time in Chicago. Although I knew I wasn't going to get whacked, but you never know. You never know what could happen. You could get a bum beef, and I've gotten a few of them in my life. As a matter of fact, one of them jail sentences that I got the 15 years on, that was a bum beef. That was an armed robbery I didn't commit. But as I was told by the government, you get away with some, you lose some, And
yeah, you hear that a lot. That guys are going along their whole life doing crime and getting away with it. And the one case that they get when they get the jackpot is something where they weren't even guilty.
Exactly, and that's just what happened to me. And getting back to that, then I made my move. I made maybe one or two phone calls to Tony within that period of time. When I say Tony, I mean Spilotro.
Sure.
And then I decided to move to Vegas. Well, I really didn't have much of a choice, and I did move to Vegas, and I hooked up with Tony immediately. And Tony told me what he'd like me to do while I was in Vegas. And in my first book, I explained all of that, the things that I was required to do while I lived in Vegas was like get a group of guys together to work for me. They would deal strictly with me and not with Tony. Tony was the guy that was like in the background. Although they knew that Tony was involved, he would never give them any orders. It had to come through me. He sheltered himself from this, which is smart.
So even when he first got out to Vegas, he was being real careful.
Yeah, he tried to be, but once they know who you are, Vegas was a small town. I believe there was probably maybe 250 or 350,000 people in the town when I got here. It was small. So it's like a fishbowl. I always refer to it then as a fishbowl that if they wanted you, it's all they got to reach in there and pluck you right out. So what we had to do is we had to stay a step ahead of law enforcement and the FBI. So we made sure we had top-of-the-line radio equipment and everything, and to stay ahead of the law enforcement, which we'd done, for quite a while there. And we even continued doing it, even once they were on us day and night. They used to put transponders on our cars. They tried to bug our restaurant with cameras in the ceiling. We'd find all that shit, which would make them even madder. It was like rubbing pie in their face. We didn't do it intentionally. We were just watching their own back. But they used to get pissed off at us, and make them hate us more. And at that time, this is the Wild Wild West, brother. They'd take you for a ride, these Metro cops, and put a couple in your head and throw you in the desert. And who's going to argue over it? You know what I mean? You ain't going to prove that they've done it. Nobody's going to prove it. So you had to be super careful. You always had to make sure that you were surrounded with people. You didn't want to be alone if they pulled you over on the street because you never knew what was going to happen. So I got to be real touchy about that time. And we committed, and I told my guys, I got 4 or 5, then I went to 6 guys. But we never worked 6 guys all at once, except on the last robbery done, which we got caught on, and that was Bertha's Home Furnishings on Sahara, which was going to be $1 million score. And that's the only time we used 6 guys at one time, and one of them just happened to be a federal informant. And when I say federal informant, there's a difference between an informant and a federal witness. An informant's a frustrated guy that wants to be a cop, and he's a crook, so he wears a wire, and he goes around, and he's a frustrated cop, more or less, let's say. And he acquires all this information on you and works hand in hand with the police. Now, they need guys like that, the law enforcement. In my case, I was a federal witness only because I was forced in a situation because there was a hit on me, set on me, to whack me. And I heard that audio and I read the transcripts on it. So that is one of the main reasons why I rolled. If I'd never heard it or read it, I would have never rolled, and I'd probably be still in the penitentiary, which would be about 36 years right now. But I made the right decision. I feel as though I made the right decision. And it was very difficult. I rolled, and I was hesitant. At first, I thought I could play a game with the government. I could get away and bullshit them a little bit, you know. But as you start getting at this real serious with them, and they give you immunity, then you start realizing that if you get caught in a lie, if you confess to any murders with this immunity, all that goes away, and they can start trying you for all your cases, murder included. So now you had to be super careful. You could never lie. So if I had intentions of trying to pull the wool over their eyes, but in the long run, they pulled the wool over my eyes. And that's basically most of it, most of my life.
Yeah, we're having some echo with you, Frank. So what I'm going to do is, after the break, I'm going to call you up on your phone. Okay, so why don't we try this? Can you go on mute? I tell you what, I'm going to disconnect from you now, and I'm going to call you up after the break.
Okay.
And I'm going to talk to Danny and Robert, and then we'll get back to you after the break. Okay, my friends, so sit tight.
Yeah, you're breaking up too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Okay, guys, that should be a lot better now. Yeah, because you know what it is? He has his speakers on. He doesn't have a headset. So, Danny, man, why don't you give us your take on all of this? You wrote a book with the guy.
I've written 2 now with Frank, and I've got to tell you that writing the book with Frank and the toughest job I had working with Frank was that he was very unemotional. His voice was always kind of a monotone, and we'd be talking on the phone. I would have my paper and pencil out making notes, and I don't take shorthand, so I'm always behind trying to remember what he said. And because he never changed voice inflection, all of a sudden I'd say, "Wait a minute, Frank, did you just tell me you broke a guy's legs at this particular location for such and such a reason?" He'd say, "Yeah." I'd say, "Well, the reader wants to know the details on that, what happened, what it was all about." And Frank said, "Oh, it was just, like another day at the office." So I had to learn to listen very carefully, or I would miss stuff. So that was my biggest problem with working with Frank. And all I could think of was the line out of The Godfather. "There's nothing personal, it's strictly business." Because that's exactly the way he describes these things. And when you get Frank back on the line, he mentioned Louis the Mooch Eberly a few minutes ago. And there's a little more about Louis that Frank can tell you, including what happened between Frank and Louis the Mooch, and also Louis the Mooch's role in the murder of the Spilotro brothers. So Louis the Mooch was was in a lot of stuff and involved in a lot of stuff. And the other thing, when we did the book Cullotta, that was the first book, came out in 2007, we described a whole bunch of stuff that Frank had been involved in. And I didn't realize it at the time until I got a email from the publisher saying that a gentleman named Paul Scharf had contacted them trying to get in touch with me. He needed to talk with me about the book Cullotta. So I wasn't sure what it was about, but I responded to him. And it turned out that in Cullotta on page 130, Frank described a double homicide in Lake Moore, Illinois. It's a few miles out of Chicago. It took place in 1981. And I assumed when Frank was telling me about it that because when he became a government witness, he had to give all this information to the government, that case had been disposed of. Well, it turned out it was an open double homicide. In the book, we named the killer. And one of the victims turned out to be Paul Scharf's father. And that's how he found out who killed his dad, was when he read that book. So it turned into quite an interesting experience. The gentleman's name who did the murder was Larry Newman, and Frank can a very dangerous individual. His name is not a household name when you talk about crime, but he was very bad. And amazingly, I've heard stories about Illinois and some of the things that happened there that seem a little odd. Larry Newman had been convicted of triple homicide in 1956. He was sentenced to 125 years. He got paroled in 12. So if you can figure out how that came about, God bless you. But anyway, he got back on the street. Frank met Larry Newman in prison, and they became affiliated. And then Larry became part of Frank's hole-in-the-wall gang crew. So that was, to me, a very interesting situation and how it came down. And then the other thing that was captivating for me was I also had sources for my books who were the former FBI agents and Las Vegas Metro cops who had actually done the investigations. And they were now retired and could talk for the first time really off the job. And to find out what Frank and his boys were thinking and what the law was thinking, and it was almost like watching a chess game, but knowing what was going on in the minds of the players. And
all right, so we got a break right now. We'll be right back after this break. We got former mobster Frank Cullotta, who is the movie Casino is based on his life story and his wall gang. We got Danny Griffin, who's a former cop, former PI. He's an author of about 16 different books, true crime books. We also got Robert George Allen, who runs the Las Vegas Mob Tour, and also the Mob Con Convention. Here in Vegas, where you can come down here and meet all the mobsters. We'll be right back after this break. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. Every Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, listener-sponsored radio. And then rebroadcast Monday nights, 6 p.m. on awakeradio.us. Got a little announcement. Tomorrow afternoon, 2 p.m., I'm going to be hosting and moderating the Clark County, Nevada Sheriff's Debate. All the sheriff candidates are going to be assembling at Ricardo's Mexican Restaurant at 4930 West Flamingo Road, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock. So come on down. You can watch the debate live, and you can see in person, buy my book. Maybe I'll bring some books with me. You can pick up my book. Maybe Denny will come down there and sell some books too, right? But you're in New York now, right, Denny?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, too bad. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Frank a call because we're only going to have Frank until 6:30 tonight because I guess he has some kind of job to do late tonight. So I'm going to get... Yeah. Okay, let me see if I can bring him in here. This is Frank Cullotta from the movie Casino. And he was actually... Hey, Frank, how are you?
Okay.
Okay, great, man. Well, you sound a lot better. So Denny was telling us some stories about you. He was telling us about this guy, Newman.
Oh, yeah, Larry worked for me.
Yeah. So
I consider Larry a serial... He was no different than a serial killer, you know. He was a very dangerous, intelligent individual. He was not a stupid man, and he had money. But they say when you're that bright, sometimes you're on the edge. And I believe that's true, according to the way he lived his life. We call him Lurch.
So then what was the deal with him? If he had money, why did he want to make money killing people?
He liked the thrill, getting over on people. I believe that's what it was. I can't answer that question for him, but the only thing I could think of is that he liked the thrill. And I know of five, 6 people for sure that he killed, and I didn't keep a track of it, but I'm sure he would have done a lot more, or he has done more. I mean, he just passed away about 5 years ago. He died in state penitentiary, Stateville, with his little Jewish cap on top of his head. He was 100% Jewish. I didn't know that he was that involved in his faith until I seen him. They posted an obituary, about him dying, what he requested on his head. What do they call it, hammock?
Yarmulke.
Yarmulke.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wanted that on his head, and he was really into his faith, into the Jewish deal there. But he was a very dangerous and very highly educated man. He didn't know when he was going to go off. I even worried about him, but I never let him know that. I know Tony Spilotro was worried about him because he told me he's not ever sick the big guy on me, meaning Larry, because he knew I had control over him, And I asked Larry one time, I said, you were ever brought to your attention that you had to put Tony away, would you do it? And he said no. And I found that rather shocking, I wasn't, I was testing him to see, he said, no, I wouldn't do it. So, evidently he liked Tony.
Yeah, but I'm sure if he would have got orders back from Chicago, he would have done it.
No, he wouldn't have done it. He would have probably retaliated against them. He was if he was with you, he was with you 100%. Just like if I were out there and Tony had a problem and he knew that there was going to be a war and they were trying to kill him, of course, I would help him fight whoever it was, I don't think I would have got the same out of him, but I know I would have done it. I'm sure Larry would have done it, and I'm sure all the guys in my crew would have. Leo Gardino, no. Leo was not a violent man. He was just what's that noise?
Somebody's phone's ringing. I think it's Daddy. But let me ask you this, Frank. Maybe it's the FBI listening in, but you got nothing to worry about now, right?
Oh, I don't give a shit. Man. Robert, is that your phone? I know you're deaf.
Let me ask you a question.
Not my phone.
Whose is it?
It's not mine.
Stop now.
No, it's not my
What
phone.
are you going to ask me?
Oh, yeah, Frank. Okay, now when you come out here, right, it's you and your little crew there, right? And it sounds to me like the only competition you had were the cops.
Well, yeah. They were the only threat we had was the Metro, but we didn't quite worry about them that much. We always were more concerned about the feds because they had more money and they access to more money where they could do things, So it was the feds that we were concerned about, and
Okay.
they were a thorn in our side, both feds and Metro.
Yeah, I could imagine. Now let me ask you this too. Now, you saw the TV series Crime Story with the Farina?
Yeah, that's a long time ago, that one there. I know Dennis Farina.
Okay, because that's pretty much the same story.
Exactly. They copied my whole life. My life has been copied through the years. You know the movie The Thief? You remember The Thief?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
I was approached on that movie by policemen that were friends with Michael Mann.
Okay.
And Michael Mann was buddies with these guys. I think he was a detective in his early years. And they approached me, and they wanted me to be a consultant and act in the movie. And I told them, are you kidding me? I was heavily involved with the outfit at the time. I said, I'm not that great of a thief. I can't cross 2 battery wires that got exploding. I was just giving them that shit. I can't do that. I said, if I'd done something like that, I'd be dead tomorrow. So they went along, and okay, well, we need you. And they basically said it's going to be about you and Tony, me and Tony Spilotro. And they went ahead and got this guy, John something or Santucci, who was a thief, but he was not on the skill, that we were. And he done the movie with them. I think they gave him 50G. He had a couple roles in the movie. And he stole Michael Mann's 2-carat diamond ring.
Okay, he deserves it then. But wait, they're just saying while you were still out there doing stuff, they came to you and they wanted to do a movie about you?
Oh, yeah, they wanted to do the movie The Thief.
Yeah.
That was going to be, because all of them guys, Joe Gaggs, that's a real-life character. I mean, Joe Gagliano is Joe Gaggs.
Okay.
And, and the car lot, the car business and stuff like that, because we always had car lots, We always dealt in car lots. It was a front, you know what I mean? And we did that score, with the burning bar, all of that. So I didn't even put that shit in my book. There's too much stuff. I can't I don't want to go to book 3. It's just a headache. There's not enough money.
We'll do it on the show tonight.
Books.
We'll get it on the show then. No, wait, let me ask
so
you.
I was involved. We invented that burning bar, you know.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. You know, of course, every good crook learns from a legitimate guy. He could be a welder. He could be a locksmith, body shop offender guy. You know, I mean, these guys, they're legit. If you got a body and fender place, a car comes in total, it don't come in with the keys. They got to know how to start the car or turn the ignition on. If it's runnable, let's say, if it's rear-ended, so they got to know how to start the car. So that's how we learned about the column.
Okay, so Frank, when you're in that type of life, right? All day long, 24 hours a day, everybody you meet, everybody you run into, you're thinking all the time, how can I use this guy to move my enterprise forward?
Not necessarily, not the way you're talking about. We didn't do that unless there was a business transaction, a legitimate deal, like with a Jewish guy, and because mostly the Jews come up with the biggest business investments, and they usually at that time needed a little protection. But other than that, as far as my lifestyle, how we led it, of course I was connected to the outfit, but I wasn't a member of the outfit. I was a connected guy. So I would look for scores, or somebody would come to me with a big score, and then we would put it together and we'd find out who was capable of doing this type of a robbery, and we could use their expertise. I mean, hey, it was like a full-time job because our minds are always growing. You couldn't do it nowadays. There's too much technology out there.
Okay, so now let's get back to the TV series Crime Story, because that is your story. And that was going on. Wait, that was going on at the same time you were doing this stuff here.
Yeah, I know. I was laughing. We were laughing about it. These guys copied my life, Tony and my life, because that's Tony and I in the car. There's that Johnny Savoni, the same guy, that they used for the thief. That Johnny Savoni, he was in that.
That's right.
Yeah, I know. He's died now. He passed away, but he was the only one that had knowledge of the Chicago outfit that had really nothing to worry about.
Right.
Because he was nobody. He was a petty-handed crook. The guy who was with Brown, the guy that they used in the movie, he was a good thief.
Now they had a Teddy Binion character in there too as well.
Teddy what?
Teddy Binion.
I don't recall.
Okay. What about that? They had a Bob Stupak character in there as well too.
Yeah.
Like, you must have known those guys, right?
Oh, I knew who they were. Yeah, but I didn't. If I didn't have to deal with them, I wouldn't sit down with them.
Okay.
I wouldn't go to the room because the more people you know, the more you get out there, the more you're out there. I was pretty clever that way. I mean, even Tony was like that. If he had to meet Benny Binion, and stuff like that, we'd meet him at the Villa d'Este, and of course we knew our surroundings in there, and nobody was going to come in that door if we didn't know who they were.
Okay, let me ask you this though, because about that TV series again. Okay, Crime Story. The guy who was the lawyer in that story. Now, was that Goodman?
No. The guy that played Story. I wouldn't wait. The guy you're talking about is that crazy guy. It's a comedian now.
Right.
What the hell's his name?
Oh no. Not. I know who you're talking about. That series.
Yeah, he's playing out here in Vegas. He's a nut. He's got a real vulgar mouth.
Yeah, with the leather jacket.
Yeah. I can't even think of his damn name. He was in that series.
Right. But I'm talking about the guy who played the lawyer, because in that series, the lawyer who was part of that crew was an informant. Now, wasn't that lawyer supposed to be Oscar Goodman?
You know what? I can't remember. It's been so long. I really, honestly can't tell you. I remember that. If it was done in Chicago, I even forgot. We did it in Vegas. I mean, it was done in Vegas. Yeah. I can't remember.
Now, nobody from Vegas, when they saw all this stuff going on TV, they didn't go down there and lean on those guys and say, "Hey, cut it out."
No. Nobody. You ain't gonna. No, because if I was in the movie, they would have come and grabbed me. They would have whacked me. If any guy that was connected, they would have come and got, But they just and they let the guys do it. It's not real. Is because they're not the real characters, So we had to keep ourselves out of that stuff,
Yeah, you're talking about Andrew Dice Clay, by the way, was the comedian.
Andrew Dice Clay.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Right.
He
But
was
now,
he
okay,
was
but
in that movie. I bet a lot of guys didn't know that he was in that movie because the movie's so damn old,
Yeah, it's a TV series, not a movie. Yeah, but I remember because it was going on. That was the real story, and it was the same story as Casino.
Right.
Yeah. All right.
I did a scene in that thing.
Oh, did you? Let's hear about that.
Yeah,
Where were you in there?
I played a drunk cowboy at the Atomic Lounge, and Dennis Farina threw me over the bar.
Yeah, see, I don't even remember that. I'm not.
In one of the series, it was actually they filmed at Vegas World because I was working for Stupak as a comedian at the time. And they saw me and they said, "You want to do a scene?" So we went down to the Atomic Bar. They put a big scar on my face and a cowboy hat, and I looked like some old drunk cowboy. And Dennis Farina asked me if I'd seen this body. He showed me a picture, and I said, "No, I never seen it. Why don't you go after yourself?" And he threw me over the bar. Of course, it was a stunt double, but that was my big moment on Crime Story.
That thing went pretty good, that Crime Story. That did well.
Yeah,
I was upset,
Michael Mann was a nice guy. Easy to work with.
Yeah, he was. And Dennis Farina was a nice guy, too,
Oh, I liked him very much. He was a gentleman.
He didn't get the breaks he should have got in that industry,
Well, wait a second, Frank.
Right.
How did you know these guys? You know them because they came to you and wanted you to be in Thief, or you knew them besides that? Yeah, yeah.
Dennis Farina, he used to be a I used to see him in Chicago. He was a detective in Chicago. I knew him before he was a movie star. Yeah. He was a detective. I could tell you what precinct he worked out of.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Shakespeare. That was the name of the station, Shakespeare.
Yeah, Shakespeare Station. Is that where he was? I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, he was there. I know Dennis Farina when he had a uniform on, and then he made cop. Of course, he made cop along with Hannah Hart and everybody else. These are cops that used to drive me nuts. Except for Dennis Farina,
He was a good guy.
He wanted to be a movie star. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Everybody wants to be a movie star. I didn't want to be a movie star then,
Well, you're pretty famous now. Oh, and you were in Casino.
Yeah, well, that was different. I was out of the racket, and I was approached by Mick Pileggi, and several meetings I had, made several dollars meeting with them before I got the big payday, and as Nick said, and my two guys there on the phone could attest to it because they seen the audio, the video of it, me interviewing Nick. Nick said they could have never did the movie Casino without me. And he owed it all to me.
Why don't you tell people what the scene you were in so they can put a face to your name there?
What, in Casino?
Yeah.
I did 98% of the killing in the movie, so I killed in the scene in Costa Rica. I beat the guy in the face in the car with the pipe where the blood's all over. I shot the guys in the grave. What else did I do?
Alan King.
Alan King, yeah.
Alan King. I shot him in the parking lot over there. Supposed to be Ruth Chris. That was all done in Vegas. All them snow scenes, they blow up the snow out there, that phony snow. And them were the main scenes I was in. I wasn't in the scene where they killed Tony and Michael because I said, no, I ain't going to do that scene. So Frank Vincent was the actor, so most naturally they used him for that scene. I didn't even want to be involved in that scene because I just didn't like the way they were killed.
Right? I could imagine. But even though, did you actually testify against Spilotro, or you just...
No, I testified against him, but, let me put it like this to you. Tony had the opportunity. The most they could have gave him was 10 years. I knew that. The most they could have gave him. My cat is in the litter box. You hear her make a noise?
Yeah.
The most he could have got was 10 years. But if they would have given 5 years, if Oscar would have let Oscar Goodman, and by the way, he was my attorney too, Oscar. If he would have copped out, they would have cut it down to 5 years. I tried to signal Tony that message. He knew what I was saying. We were like in a corridor, and I could see him, and he could see me, and there was no marshals around me or him because we were walking. I was walking down the hallway, and I could look down this long hallway, and I'd see him, and I put up my hand like 5.
Yeah.
And I said, take it, right? He didn't take it. Oscar fought, and they had a mistrial because one of the jurors was sleeping, and all this crazy trial. And the wind-up is they got it prolonged, and Tony was murdered. and his brother. He'd have been better off going to jail for a nickel. He'd have been alive today. And I'd have been still on the run.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I bet. Yeah, but if you both had the same attorney, why couldn't Goodman give him the message?
No, it was he couldn't, because look, once I rolled, Goodman was co-counsel to John Monmouth. I couldn't use Goodman as my number one lawyer because I had John Monmouth. It would have been a conflict of interest. So I had to use him as co-counsel, as advisor to Monmouth, because Tony felt as though Monmouth wasn't capable of handling all the cases I had. So he says, we need Oscar in on this. I was against it because I felt embarrassed for John Monmouth, but we put Oscar in there, and Oscar got paid well, and he advised Monmouth on how to do things. You know, he was like more or less a connection for me. So I couldn't talk to Oscar. Oscar don't talk to me today.
Really?
Yeah, he don't like me. He should be happy about me because he got famous over guys like us.
Yeah, that's true.
Who would have known Oscar Goodman if he didn't have anything to do with Tony Spilotro and me and all of us guys? His whole law firm. We used every lawyer in his law firm to defend us. You know.
Yeah, he turned out he did very well for himself out of all of this.
Oh, he did very well. Very well. And more power to him. More power to him. I'm not, saying more power to the guy.
Yeah, just think like all the money that's in town these days. 100 times, 1,000 times what it was back in those days.
Well, yeah, but we could have never gotten near that amount with these. There's too much corporation.
Yeah.
You can't touch some of these places anymore. Town is a bunch of holy rollers. Forget about it.
So you don't think there's any kind of organized crime in Vegas today?
I don't think there's any organized crime in Vegas. There's a difference between crime and gangsters being around or on vacation, or ex-guys that were connected to some kind of an organization that are working in casinos. I'm sure they're all around, but they're not organized. There's no organization as organized crime out there. I don't believe that in my heart. If there was, I probably would know.
Right.
I don't think, I don't know, Robert, have you ever heard of anybody that you think is organized crime out there?
Organized crime, no. I think there's always going to be criminals wherever you go. I don't care what city it is.
No matter where you're at. Like in Chicago. Yeah. I even say in Chicago, and I'm asked this question often. Is organized crime still flourishing in Chicago? No, but it's there, but it's not on the scale it used to be.
Okay, Frank, I got to interrupt you because we got a break coming up. Now, guys,
I gotta leave.
You're gonna leave? You're not gonna give me another half hour, Frank?
I gotta leave. I gotta be somewhere at 6:30.
Yeah. So it's 6 o'clock.
It's gonna take me a half hour to get there.
Okay. Okay, Frank Cullotta got a job to do tonight. We're not gonna say anything about it. But when we come back, we're going to be back with...
it's not that kind of job, I'm sure. Probably got long hair and good... Probably got long hair and good legs.
Yeah, right.
Hey, did you tell them about... Did you talk about...
No, we got a break. We got a hard break. I can't talk. But Frank Cullotta, thank you very much. We'll be right back after this break. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report every Friday night, 5 p.m. Pacific Time on Revolution Radio's Studio A. Keep in mind, this is a listener-sponsored station, so if you like what you hear, you like guys like Frank Cullotta, able to run around, do whatever they want, you got to go to the website, freedomslips.com, and you click on the donate button to keep us on the air. We got with us, we have a heavy-breathing guest here right now. We have Dennis N. Griffin, who I think is on an iron lung machine, okay, where he's a former cop, a former private investigator. He's an author of all these books about Frank Cullotta. And all their books, I got links to their books on my blog, The Opperman Report. We also have with us Robert George Allen, who hasn't hardly talked at all tonight. I apologize, Robert. Why don't we get back to Robert, and you can tell us about the MobCon, all the guests you're going to have there. Why don't you give us a little rundown on who's going to be there?
Well, we have, of course, Frank Cullotta and Denny Griffin, and the former FBI special agent Dennis Arnoldy. We have Ron Fino, who was with the CIA. We have a federal judge named...
let me ask you a question. This guy, the CIA guy, what's he going to be talking about?
You know, he was FBI and CIA. His father was actually a mobster who ran Buffalo, New York, and he told his father he's going to become an FBI agent, and the FBI told him he would never have to do anything to hurt his own family, so all the work he did had never had anything to do with the Buffalo crime family because he said he wouldn't rat on his own family.
That's pretty cool.
And then after he did FBI work for a number of years, they became a CIA agent, and he went over to Iraq and all these various Middle East countries and to Russia, and he's got a hell of a background. He's done a lot of interesting stuff.
And what about the FBI guy, Al Delaney?
Who's this?
Andolini? The FBI guy you were talking about, the first one.
Oh, Arnoldy.
Arnoldy, I'm sorry.
Arnoldy. He's the one who arrested Frank and the guys at the Berthas. He's one of the guys, yeah.
And so what's he going to be talking about?
He was Frank's liaison during the time he was with the witness protection.
Gotcha.
So he's very involved with Denny, and that's I told you when I first heard about these guys, we all met together, Denny, Arnoldy, Dennis Griffin, and myself, and then eventually Frank had dinner with us, and I got to meet him, and that's when we started the mob tour. And throughout the years, we've had other projects. We had a thing called Mob Chronicles for a while. And we were sitting around working on that one day, and I don't know who came up with it, but somehow we talked about doing a mob convention. It kind of sat on the back burner for a couple of years, and then I said, hey, guys, let's do it. And now this is our second year. We had a great first year. We didn't know what we were going to get. We thought, we get 30 people, we'd be surprised. We had almost 150. And this year I think we'll do at least 200. We have... let's see who else is coming. I said Lawrence Levitt. We have Ron Schrapp, the gentleman that Denny was talking about, whose father was killed by Lurch. He's going to be there. And Denny, why don't you tell him a couple of the people we have?
Yeah, we have Paul Scharf and his co-author. Paul did a book after this whole thing came out about Larry Newman, called Murder in McHenry, and he co-authored it with Keith Bettinger, who's a former Long Island cop and now lives in Vegas. They're going to be there. We also have Stan Hunterton. Stan Hunterton has a law practice currently in Las Vegas, Hunterton Law, and prior to that, he was a strike force attorney for the Federal Organized Crime Strike Force, and he, in fact, was involved in the whole operation against Tony Spilotro and his people, preparing the warrants and this and that. We're going to have Lynn Farron, a retired FBI agent who handled the skim operations, the skim investigations for the FBI. And one of
the Stardust, right? Stardust, wasn't that Stardust?
Stardust. And one of the cute stories, he was cute. One of the stories that. A little humor in it is that they were following the couriers who were transferring the money, the skim money that was eventually going back to Chicago, and they'd been following the couriers for about 18 months, and they were finally ready to make an arrest. They got the warrants and so forth. Of course, the warrants had to be signed by judges. The day they went to arrest the two guys with the money transfer, instead of a paper bag, they were carrying a box, which got some alarm bells going off in the FBI heads. But they went ahead with the arrest, and when they opened the box, rather than a few $100,000 in cash, it contained wine, cheese, and crackers. And somebody, obviously, somewhere along the line, the whole thing got out. And the guys they arrested didn't have any money with them. So that 18 months was, Lynn Farron says, had he been living in feudal Japan, he'd have had to fall on his sword over that deal. So they called it the Great Cookie Caper. And we're going to have at least three, maybe more ladies who've been on these mob wives and married to the mob type reality shows that have been on, are going to be there. We have John D'Amore, who is an author and screenwriter, and in fact, his family, there was some mafia connection. He just wrote a book called The Boss Always Sits in the Back Seat, and it's how one of his family members, who was a boss, was
He sounds exciting. I've never seen him, but he sounds like he's got a lot going, so that should be an interesting one.
He certainly does. It's going to be some, and we also have the guy who was part of the film crew for the movie Casino, and in the scene where the Spilotro, well, it's not Spilotro, but where Joe Pesci and his brother are beaten to death in the cornfield and thrown in the grave, we got the guy who actually went in the grave in Pesci's place.
Yeah, his big scene is they're dragging him. You see him being dragged into the grave. Hey, don't forget to tell him about your other book and one of our big stars that's coming, Andrew.
Andrew DiDonato.
Yep.
He was a Gambino affiliate, the Gambino crime family out in New York. He did not work in John Gotti's crew, but he was there when Gotti was the boss. And his book that he and I co-authored is called Surviving the Mob. And
excellent book, Denny. Excellent book. I enjoyed it very much.
Thank you, Robert. He's got
then
some
we
great
also
stories.
have Tony Montana, who was a good friend of Frank's. He's like the world's authority on every mob story in the world. I mean, you ask Tony about anything that happened anytime, anywhere, and he knows who did it, when it happened, and why it went down. So he's interesting to have. We'll have him there too. And we've got. I'm trying to think. Did we miss anybody?
Well, yeah, Denise Francaise, right? How do you pronounce that, by the way? Francaise or Francese?
I call it.
Denise is going to be there.
Yeah. Francesi.
Okay, now is she the one that was married to the guy who ratted out his own father, or the brother?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and is he also the one that was involved in the tour with the Michael Jackson tour with Al Sharpton?
I don't know.
We don't know.
I don't know that.
I don't know on that one.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, we don't know that much about her. We just got those girls a couple of weeks ago, so we'll see what happens. We'll get more information as we go along. But there's going to be a great bunch of people there. We're also going to, so you understand how it works, it happens on September 27th and 28th, which is a Saturday, Sunday. It'll start Saturday morning. We'll have lecturers and speakers all day, and then about 6 o'clock we're going to break, and at 7 o'clock or 7:30 we're going to have a cocktail party with live entertainment. I'll be singing. We're going to have a former keyboard player who worked with the mob for years. I've got a couple of comedians going to come in, so we're going to have a big cocktail party. Then the next morning, on Sunday morning, we start up again with more speakers, and it goes until it goes, and then we all join each other downstairs in the main lounge where we throw a big party and say goodbye to everybody. So it's a lot of fun. It's 2 days of fun. And now Frank and I have just recently discussed, and I think he talked to you, Denny, about this, is doing Frank's casino tour the night before on Friday night if we can get it rocking. We've got an option for a 60-seat bus, so if some of the people who are going to go first come, first serve, they can get to see Frank's casino tour, and they'll meet Denny and myself on that, and it'll be fun.
What hotel is this going to be in?
I'm sorry, what?
What hotel?
It's at the Palace Station.
Okay.
And it's Saturday and Sunday, but it might also be Friday night if we do this extra tour. And on that bus we'll have Denny Griffin and Dennis Arnoldi and myself and Frank. And it'll be fun. Well, that's an extra event. We don't know for sure we're doing it, but we've been putting out our feelers, and a lot of people say they'd love to do it. So we'll see what happens with it.
And you're not sold out yet? You still have tickets available?
Tickets are available at mob-con.net. mob-con.net. And that's where you can buy your tickets. It's available through PayPal, or you can call 866-218-4935. 866-218-4935, and our operator who's on duty, she'll take your order if you don't want to use PayPal.
Okay, great. Yeah, because the show's going to be rebroadcast again on Monday, so they can call in too, 6 o'clock. And also, too, we're going to be up on YouTube. This show is up on the YouTube channel, the Opperman Report YouTube channel. It'll be up there for months and months. So if you're hearing this, this convention is going to be at the end of September. So there's plenty of time to order tickets between now and then. All right, so Denny, why don't you give us some more stories about Frank and all these guys and all this stuff you've been involved in?
Okay, I just for a minute want to go back to Louis the Mooch.
Oh, yeah, good, yeah.
Tell you a little more about him. Frank mentioned that Louis the Mooch had been putting the muscle on the lounge that Frank bought into in Chicago for about $1,600 a week. And so Louis was not particularly happy that Frank had cost him that amount of money. So Frank thinks that the person who blew the whistle on him for this Las Vegas night when everybody got arrested was probably Louis. And then Frank's brother, who was acting as a doorman, and a couple of other guys were working at the lounge. And one night there was a guy in there who became basically drunk and disorderly, refused to leave when he was asked to leave. So these guys roughed him up a little bit and threw him out. Turned out it was Louis the Mooch's stepson. Louis the Mooch came back in, not too happy, and he told his stepson identified Frank as the guy who had roughed him up. So Louis ended up he was a good friend of the then boss of the outfit, Joey Ayupa, and he wanted Joey to allow him to have Frank not killed, but badly beaten. We're given a good working over. Dove's Ayupa was out of town on vacation, so he went. He took his beef to Joey the Clown Lombardo. Joey wanted to end the thing without bloodshed, so what they did, they got Frank over to where they were having a cookout, and Frank was held down, or put down in the ground, so Louis was allowed to beat him in the head with a cinder block. Joey Lombardo says, "Are you satisfied, Louis?" Louis says, "Yeah, I'm satisfied." He says, "That's good enough." So he gets up. Louis leaves the area. They get Frank up, wipe him off, the blood off, and get him cleaned up. And he said, Lombardo explained that had they waited and let Ayupa come back and make the decision, Frank would have gotten a lot worse. So Lombardo said he kind of did him a favor by letting this happen. But Frank wanted to kill Louis the Mooch. Lombardo said, "No way, put it on the shelf. It's not going to happen. He's a good earner for us, let it go." Frank opinion shopped. He went to Tony Spilotro and tried to get Tony, who was now a made man, to give him permission. Tony said, "No way." He said, "Lombardo told you to keep it on the shelf. That's what you're going to do." But as it turned out, when Tony Spilotro and his brother were murdered, and it was not in the cornfield, it was in the basement of a house in a Chicago suburb. When they walked down the stairs into the cellar that day thinking they were going to a meeting, the guy who put a rope around Tony's brother, Michael, was Louis the Mooch Eberly. And we couldn't help but wonder if it went through Tony's mind as he saw Louis put the rope around his brother's neck. Maybe he would have voted differently had Frank come to him and asked permission to kill Louis. Of course, it didn't matter. I mean, there was enough guys there that the Spilotro was going to be killed anyway. But Louis the Mooch was in a lot of stuff, and he ended up being one of the killers who participated in the murder of the Spilotro brothers.
Now, do you remember the names of the killers? I know it was the family secret thing. Was it family secrets? Is that what they called it?
Yeah, there was the Calabreses. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Calabrese boys were in there.
That was the father of Frank, and then the uncle. Was that what we're talking about?
Yeah, it was Frank Sr.
And Nick. Was it Nick?
And Nick was the uncle.
Right.
Yeah, they were,
and then there was another guy too, wasn't there? A guy named Manzella or something like that?
Yes. By the time they got to these guys after the family secrets investigation the feds did, several of them were dead. By that, several of the people, including the Mooch, he died of cancer. But they got convictions on all the remaining living participants for racketeering and murder as part of the racketeering. So it was quite successful. And
so Tony basically got justice eventually.
Yeah, and I was writing a book called The Battle for Las Vegas when the indictments came out, and I talked to Tony's widow, Nancy Spilotro, a few times during the book, and when I found out about the indictments, I called her and asked her for her thoughts. And she said, well, first of all, they had named Lombardo. They didn't give any details. They just named who was indicted and what the charges were, allegations. Right. And she said, I'll have to see the proof. She said they can charge anybody. So that was understandable. But she said, because she said Joey Lombardo had been like a family member, had eaten, with them when he came to Vegas to visit. He would stay at their house and so on and so forth.
Wasn't he involved in the original, the thing where they put the guy's head in the vice? Wasn't he there at the time?
Yes, there's report that he was one of the participants.
Okay, so he goes back a long way with Tony. I mean, right from the beginning.
Oh, he does. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Nancy said, but to tell you the truth, she said, I never thought, because our name wasn't Kennedy or one of the big politicians or law people, she said, I never thought they would actually continue to investigate the murders of Tony and Michael. So she was very surprised that the feds had kept on it for as long as they did to find the killers and charge the killers. So,
do you think the movie Casino kind of helped that along? Because, I mean, everybody and their brother knew that it was about them, and maybe the feds felt that they had to close that book, maybe. I don't know.
I had access eventually through FOIA requests to some of the FBI documents, and apparently they had several of these so-called gangland hits that they were trying to clean up and use as the basis for RICO charges. And I think the Spilotros happened to be in the mix. I'm not sure that they were singled out that, we got to get the Spilotro thing, but they were part of it. And it happened that they were able to find the evidence
they could put them all the way together.
Yeah, after they killed the Spilotros, though, that was pretty much the end of organized crime. Weren't there other guys from Chicago that can come here and take over in Kansas City and stuff?
There were other guys. The whole deal with the Spilotro operation kind of ended the Chicago outfit's control of Las Vegas.
Okay.
It was not the end of the outfit itself, but that was the beginning of the end. It kind of was the end of the Las Vegas operation for the outfit. And then eventually the stuff that happened, and including the murders of the Spilotros and so on, ended up years later to help bring down a lot more of
it became like a house of cards, didn't it, Denny? I mean, eventually all the casinos were sold to corporations, and one by one they tumbled.
Exactly. So it was and after these guys were caught, the Hole in the Wall gang was caught at Bertha's. Dennis Arnoldy, the former FBI agent who Robert has mentioned earlier, he said in his opinion, and he was the case agent for the Las Vegas field office for the street crimes. And even though the street crimes, primarily the burglaries and the robberies, they were state charges, they were going to be used as the feds' basis for RICO charges under the RICO, the federal statute. So Dennis was the case agent for those investigations, the street crimes investigations. He said there were three things he considered to be the major turning points in what I call the battle, the law versus the mob. And those three were when Frank killed a federal witness named Jerry Listener in 1979. And in fact, in the movie Casino, they fictionalized it, and that's where this caption on the screen says Costa Rica.
Right.
Well, that was actually based on the murder of Jerry Listener that Frank did in Las Vegas. The second,
which was actually on Rawhide, wasn't it, Denny?
Exactly, on Rawhide.
Yeah, which is very close to Costa Rica if you look at the neighborhood.
in the neighborhood. The second big event was the Bertha's burglary, and that's when the feds and Las Vegas Metro combined with the help of an inside informant named Sal Romano to let the gang actually carry out the burglary or gain entry to the buildings. They had a burglary instead of an attempt, a little more serious, and they busted them all. And the third major event was after Bertha's, when Frank flipped and became a government witness, because Frank's testimony was instrumental pretty much in dismantling the Chicago's operation in Las Vegas. So those were supposedly the three, according to Dennis Arnold anyway, the three major incidents, and they all involve Frank.
Well, let me ask you this. Now, after Frank became a witness and he was in the witness protection program, because obviously he's not now, did he ever run into anybody that would give him any trouble, or were people looking for him?
Well, I'll answer that, what I know, and then Robert maybe will have something to
Yeah,
add.
I heard one story. Go ahead, Denny.
Okay, well, Frank told me, let me go back and as an author, Ed, you probably appreciate this. I told Frank when we were discussing doing his first book, Cullotta, I said, Frank, there's going to have to come at some point, once we get the manuscript completed and find a publisher, and the book gets out, there's going to have to be a promo effort. These books don't just sell themselves. You have to get out and hustle and do interviews and make appearances and do signings and all this kind of stuff. I said, because of your background, are you willing to do that? And he said, I'll tell you what. He said, right now, he said, everybody pretty much that I was involved with in the outfit is dead or in prison. He says, my only concern now, really, he said, would be some young gun, like in the Western movies where the up-and-coming gunslinger wants to bump off the old established guy to get a reputation. So that's kind of where Frank is.
Okay, I got to cut you off. We got another break. We'll be right back after this. We got Denny Griffin and Robert George Allen, who's the owner of Las Vegas Mob Tours and the Mob Con. We'll be right back after this. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Ed Opperman. We have with us tonight, we had Frank Cullotta, who was one of the genuine mobsters from the movie Casino. We have Robert George Allen, who runs the Las Vegas Mob Tour and has a big Mob Con convention coming up at the end of September at the Palace Station Hotel over here in Vegas, where he's going to have all these guys here. We have Dennis Griffin, who's a former cop, former PI. He's an author. I have links to all their websites and all their phone numbers and stuff is on my blog, The Opperman Report. But real quick, guys, Dennis, first, why don't you give us your website and name a couple of your books here, your favorite books you want to get out there. And then, Robert, you do the same. Give us your website and your phone number and stuff, and then we'll get back into these stories.
Okay, mine is Dennis N. That's N as in Norman Griffin, GRIFFIN .biz. That's BIZ, and that'll take you to my personal website. And my books, my favorite books are my organized crime books. And the first one is The Battle for Las Vegas: The Law versus the Mob, which is the story behind the movie Casino, what it was actually like in Vegas during the Spilotro era. And then my two books with Frank, Cullotta, and the most recent book, Hole in the Wall Gang, and Surviving the Mob, which we mentioned earlier about Andrew DiDonato. And my other crime book, now this is not from the mob side, but from the law side, is Rogue Town, which Ed mentioned earlier was done with Vito Colucci regarding Vito's undercover experiences with the Stamford, Connecticut Police Department. Very, very moving story of what he went through.
Yeah, that's a fascinating story. And Vito has his own radio show, too, called Crime Time PI with Vito Colucci on Business Blog Talk Radio. Great show. Have you been on that show?
Yeah, we both. I think all of us have been on Vito's show, haven't we?
Yeah, we have. The only one.
Yeah.
I've been on
yeah. I think, and I had a show for a while. He was on mine, so I think we've all been on each other's shows. So it's pretty even at this point.
We're probably the only ones listening too, right?
Well, that's right. I had 4 people listen to my show, so I finally hung it up.
Well, actually, tonight we hit number 10 on TalkStream Live, so we did pretty good tonight.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So now, Robert, tell us about your website.
Okay, well, I have several websites. I'm just going to hit them both. If you want to check out my tours, I have the Haunted Vegas Tour, the Good Springs Ghost Hunt, the Vegas Mob Tour, Frank Cullotta's Casino Tour. And to get to those, you got to go to www.vegastourusa.com. VegasToursUSA.com. Very easy to remember. And you can see everything we sell there. And then the MobCon is www.mob-con.net, N-E-T. Those are the two websites. Now, my book has nothing to do with the mob. I have a book out called Adventures of a Ghost Stalker, and it's about my paranormal adventures. I started out in the music business as a young guy, and I traveled around with the Dick Clark people and many of the big stars from the 60s and 70s, and I used to go ghost hunting in all these small towns. And throughout the years, I put a collection of stories together, so my book is called Adventures of a Ghost Stalker, and you can get that through the website that carries the Haunted Tours, VegasToursUSA.com. I also want to toot Denny's horn a little bit there. First of all, he's got a brand new website that looks phenomenal. It's really well done, and I really like it a lot. And Denny has done so many things and written so many books. Like he's he's very prolific. I had struggled for 2 years to write one book. He puts them out like Tootsie Rolls. They come out every other week or something. So Denny's a very good writer, and he's been very, very. All three of us, we work together well. Frank and Denny and myself, and Denny Arnold. We don't see him as much, but we all get along really good, and we try to put together some very positive stuff. We're not out promoting the mob, and I want to make that statement because when we first started MobCon, we had a few people say, "Oh, you guys are promoting the mobsters." No, we're not. If we were promoting the mob, would we invite the FBI and CIA to tell their side of the story? Frank and all of us admit that, being a mobster is not the best occupation you can pick, and it certainly wasn't a glorious thing in any way whatsoever. But there is an appetite from the public to learn about these things. If Jesse James or Billy the Kid were alive today and they had gone to prison and got out, people would want to meet them, people would want to talk to them, people would want to hear their stories. It's no different. And to pretend that Las Vegas never had the mob, which a lot of people who live here now want to do, that doesn't work. I mean, this town was built by the mob. Like it or not like it, they did a good job of putting this place together. The fact that they were run out of here has nothing to do with the fact that without them, there would never have been a Las Vegas, not the way we know it anyway.
Yeah, and if you look at Frank's life, it's really not that glamorous. The guy spent 10 years of his life in prison. His whole youth was in prison, and then growing up, he has to testify against his best friend, his childhood friend, and then he sees his childhood friend beaten to death with bats. He didn't see it, but it happened.
Well, if Frank talks about, in fact, he showed me a thing once. Like, I think almost every single one of his friends, partners, associates are either dead or in prison for life. He's like the only one who's still around. So you think about it, he escaped what inevitably is a horrible thing for all of them that got involved in that stuff. So it certainly wasn't glamorous by any means. They were forced to earn, forced to kill. They were basically like kept soldiers, in my opinion, that were under the gun, pardon the pun, all the time.
Yeah. Hey, Dennis, one more thing is, because you still do some part-time PI work, right? What's the name of the PI you work for over there in New York?
In Syracuse, New York, it's called Forensic Consulting Specialties. That's FCS, and it's located on North McBride Street in Syracuse.
And what do you guys do?
Well, a lot of general type investigative work, insurance claims and things like that, and also death investigations, reviews of records. My boss, Bill Sullivan, is a former coroner and formerly worked in the morgue in Onondaga County in Syracuse, and very sharp individual. And he will do record reviews, looking for inconsistencies and maybe finding out if a person died of something that they shouldn't have died of. And also death investigations, suspicious deaths, and homicides that have turned into maybe cold cases and aren't moving, and the family wants an outside source to take a look at it.
Now, we're getting a lot of questions in the chat room about Harry Reid. Okay. All right. And there's a war going on in the chat.
You want to open up that whole can of worms, huh? Okay. Well, just think of Dickie Smothers in the movie.
Yeah.
Dickie Smothers played the senator.
No, I didn't know that until just now.
That was based on Harry Reid.
But now let me ask you a question about Harry Reid, because I think the most interesting story about Harry Reid is his involvement with Jack Gordon. What do you guys know about that?
Denny, go ahead.
I know very little about it.
Yeah, because I don't know much about that either.
Yeah, I've watched a little bit and heard some things, about some of Senator Reid's business dealings and that, how he came to be one of the wealthier senators, and some land deals that he was involved in or supposedly involved in. And
Well, didn't somebody try to blow him up one time?
well, Frank, I believe the story at that point was there was an alleged mob hit. And I talked to Frank about that, actually.
Yeah.
And Frank says, no, he said it was not a mob hit. And I said, how do you know? He said, he said, first of all, we would not have put any organized crime operation, regardless of what city you're from, would not have bombed the car that the wife generally drove. He said we never would have gone after or taken a chance on hurting or killing someone other than the target. And he said the wife's car, I guess, was actually the one that had the explosives.
Well, you see, Denny, the wife blew up the car because she wanted a new one and he wouldn't buy it for her.
It's an insurance job.
The other thing he said, and if any legitimate, that's an oxymoron, if any organized crime family was serious about wanting, whether it was Senator Reid or whoever it was, wanted them killed, he said they'd have been killed. He said you wouldn't have had that kind of a screw-up or sloppy operation. Right. So there were two reasons that Frank anyway, in his own mind, is convinced that was not an organized crime effort.
Yeah, well, they're amateurs. That's what Frank said. So.
Yeah, the story I heard was Jack Gordon was involved in that because he had given Harry Reid a bribe, and he didn't get what he was supposed to get.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that as well. As to the veracity of it, I just don't know.
Okay. All right. So, Denny, what do you think about the TV series Crime Story and the lawyer in that TV series? Do you think that was Oscar Goodman or no?
Well, I always thought it was, and of course I didn't know Oscar like Frank. Obviously he was a client at one point of Oscar, so I couldn't say that. But my impression was at that time that it was probably based on Oscar. Yeah, and that's what I thought.
In the TV series, he was an informant.
Yeah, and now that's funny because I never heard that about Oscar, and what I heard was, and I don't know how true this is, maybe Robert has some information, that actually Lefty Rosenthal was...
that would make sense, too.
Yeah, that's what I heard, too, that he was kind of involved as an informant.
And that's why he was never charged and everything?
He was never charged, but there was stuff that they now think he may have leaked at the time.
Yeah.
Well, that would make sense, but now it's been my experience, because I've worked on some organized crime cases way back to the 80s, some really big ones. I was involved in the Pizza Connection trial and the Commission trial when I was a kid back in New York working as a PI. And it's been my experience that a lot of these guys, big names that we all know, would routinely meet with the FBI and drive around in a car with them, and they would have like a free talk. Are you guys familiar with that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, look at Lucky Luciano worked with the the government during the war. All these guys seem to have a slightly double lifestyle going on because these guys were opportunists. They took advantage of whatever came their way, whether it be from organized crime or from the feds or whoever that was going to help them get their needs met. So I don't think there's much loyalty. They talk about it in The Godfather, his movie, about this honor and loyalty, but according to Frank, that's a bunch of baloney. These guys are opportunists. They're going to take whatever comes their way, whether it's from your mother, your sister, your brother, some criminal, from a federal guy, whatever works for them, and they're going to make money and come out on the other end of the stick. That's what they care about. These guys do not care about, I'm the Omerta and all that stuff. that's old-fashioned stuff. The modern crime criminals are basically larcenists, and they're going to be larcenists to the end.
I totally agree with you. And as a matter of fact, you have Karen Gravano coming on. We worked at the same place back in Staten Island when we were the same. I was in like my 30s and she was in her 20s, and I worked with her best friend. So when all that was going on with her father, So, and I totally agree with you. These guys, they all make deals. They all inform.
Well,
yeah.
It's, the days of the Mustache Pete's, and I think Denny will agree with me, where, you went to prison for the mob because it was honor and you never talked and you were those guys had honor because they were old-fashioned and they believed you don't touch somebody else's wife, that stuff's all gone out the window. These guys today, it's called the first time they're arrested, okay, who do you want me to put away? I want out of here. It's changed.
Look at Francis. He testified against his own father.
Well, but you look at it, it's a modern society. We got high tech, we got internet. Like Frank said, nobody could get away with what they did, the Hole in the Wall gang today. They've got motion detectors in the house and all kinds of technical stuff. Those guys couldn't have just drilled a hole in your wall. They just set off the, the glass breaks and every other new thing that's out there. Plus, they had more sophisticated equipment at that time than the FBI and the Metro did. Well, that's not going to, today, that's not true. And so most of the guys today, according to Frank, as he told me, is they're into cybercrime, the younger ones. These young guys today are now burglarizing and, they're sitting in the Canary Islands or Bermuda trying to hack somebody's bank account,
So Frank's still in touch with people today that are doing stuff?
What's that?
You just said that Frank says that the younger guys...
I said Frank said most of the younger guys today are probably in cybercrime. I don't say he knows them, but... Okay. Yeah, not that he said they are, it's just probably.
I missed that part. I missed you said probably.
I didn't hack your account, did I?
Not yet. I'm checking them. I want to know where Frank went tonight. That's what I want to know, what he's doing now.
Well, he's interviewing some of the mob wives.
Yeah. Hey, Ed.
He promised me an hour and a half. He was supposed to get 36 years. He gets out in 6. He promises me an hour and a half. He gets out in an hour. Okay.
Frank gets out of everything. Let me tell you that right now. You remember Harry Houdini? That's Frank. Frank's the new Harry Houdini.
Yeah.
Ed, can I ask you a question?
Yeah, shoot, yeah.
I don't know if you remember this or not. It's a little bit off the subject, but I got to ask you. Do you recall in 1970, or did you ever hear about it, where Zsa Zsa Gabor was robbed in the elevator at the Waldorf Astoria?
Yeah, I remember the story, yeah.
Okay, and there were a whole bunch of robberies during the 70s, and then in the 90s, they actually continued into the 90s after taking kind of the 80s off, where guys were taking over hotels. They took over. That's before they had safes in the rooms and stuff, and all the valuables were kept in the hotels safe, safety deposit boxes, if you will. And crews used to come in and take over the hotels. And
that was you?
No, but I got. I'm actually, and they were never caught. This particular crew was never caught, and they did. They did Zsa Zsa. They went into Zanuck, William Zanuck's, broke into his apartment and took some what they thought was paintings worth $3 million. They turned out to be fakes. But anyway, some major robberies and a lot of armed robberies, and were never caught. And I'm working with the guy now who the statute of limitations is running everything, and he's now admitting that he was the leader of this particular gang.
Oh, how cool. You're going to write a book with him?
Yeah, we're working on it now. And he was
sounds great.
Not organized crime. They were independents.
No, they were just burglars.
Yeah, well, yeah, and he used to pose. He'd go to these charity events, and he'd pose as a chauffeur. And then he'd be talking to the other chauffeurs while there's an event going on. They're all milling around waiting for their clients to come out. One of them say, "Oh, man, tonight I got the Countess of so-and-so. She's riding with me." Well, then he'd wait till they come out, and he'd follow them, force their car over, and arm rob the client.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating, if you're into the crime life and find that kind of thing interesting, it's just a fascinating
great.
stuff.
I can't wait to read it.
Well, I told him,
good.
I said, "What are you going to do when Zsa Zsa reads the book and find out you're the one that got her diamond?" and there's a little more to the story than that. I won't go into it now. But anyway,
well,
so
great.
I just wanted
as soon as
to
it's done, yeah, come on the show. Come back when you do the book, man. And whenever you got a book, come back.
Okay, I will.
We're down to about 7 minutes, guys. So I really want to get this out and promote your.
See how time flies. It feels like 2 hours.
Yeah, I know. Well, you guys are great guests, man.
You asked me if you could do your radio show or do a week in jail, and I had to think about it.
Oh, man. You're brutal, my friend.
I'm just kidding. It's been a delight.
Well, you could still wind up doing a week in jail. So the night's not over, okay?
Okay.
But let's hear about your convention again and whatever books you want to promote real quick before we hit the station break.
Well, if you want to go to MobCon, it's $179.95 right now. On August 1st, it goes up. So if you want to get tickets cheaper, this is the time to do it. They will go up again in August, and then at the door they will go up again. So I suggest if you want to do it and get the best deal, this is the time to buy your tickets. It includes 2 days of lectures with all the people we talked about, and book signings and autographs, and we have auctions. We actually get up and auction off some rare mob memorabilia.
Zsa Zsa's wedding ring, right?
No, I have Ava's. It says Green Acres on the back of it. But anyway, no, we do auctions. We also give away stuff. Last year we gave away dinner with a mobster or dinner with an FBI agent. And we have these raffle tickets that you get. And so one of the guys actually got to sit with 2 former mobsters and hear all about how they performed their murders and things. And he walked away going, "Oh, my God, I've never had a more interesting dinner in my life." Yeah. And we have the show, the cocktail party, and it's just a lot of fun. We give away books. We give away things. We have interviews. And this year, Denny came up with the idea of us getting like 2 or 3 people together at a time and doing more like panel discussions instead of each person getting up for 30, 40 minutes. It makes it more interesting because you can get more stuff covered in the amount of time, and then I'll do like a Phil Donahue and run around the room with the microphone for
there you go.
And answers.
Let me ask you a question real quick, because now both of you guys were on with Henry Hill, right?
Yeah.
Now, I heard that Henry Hill was still setting people up and working as an informant right up until the end, right up until his death.
You didn't hear me say anything. Denny, are you saying anything?
No, I
didn't. I heard nothing like that. I don't know anything about that.
No?
I think, let me tell you real quick a little funny Henry Hill story.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty much common knowledge that Henry ended up with some issues with the drugs and alcohol.
Yep.
And when I met him and did some events with him, as far as I know, it was strictly an alcohol issue at that point. But Henry drank and had problems. And we were doing the Clark County Library the last few years. Every January has been Mob Month. And a few years ago, I was on the panel. There was me, there was Henry Hill, Robert. I think you were there that night. Andrew DiDonato. We had 6 or 7 of us. Yeah. And Henry was there. Henry had been out in the afternoon and apparently had a few. And I was kind of sweating it out for that night, whether he'd show up and what kind of shape he'd be in. So he made it, and he was sober, but he was a little hungover, I guess, or something. He was still a little bit under the weather. And now we got these former mobsters, witness protection guys, 3 or 4 of them on the stage. And Henry started to doze off. And when he did, his forehead came down and hit the microphone. And it sounded like a gunshot. You want to see guys diving? And I said,
I remember
I'm
that.
my seat, brother.
That was funny. Did you see these guys jump and look around? Oh, my God, somebody just fired a shot. I can tell you another one. When we first met him, he wanted to go on the mob tour, the Vegas mob tour. So Lisa, his lady, and him, they decided to go. And I had heard about his drinking thing, and I said to Lisa, I said, look, we can't, bus with 25 people on it. I got a mob guide. He's a nice kid, but he's not going to be able to handle him if he starts heckling him. And she said, no, he's going to stay sober. He promised me. So we started out, and he was sober. We got to the Flamingo to go visit the Bugsy Siegel monument, and he disappeared. I couldn't find him. She says, where did he go? I said, I have no clue. So I go inside, and I'm looking everywhere, thinking, well, maybe he's in the casino. Well, there's this little sidebar right by the door when we went out to the monument. He's there, and he's got this, looks like about a triple of whatever he was drinking. So I said, what's going on? He said, oh, I'm just having a quick drink. I said, holy moly, that thing's like half full of, booze. He said, well, I'm fine. So he downs it. So we start to walk away, and the bartender says, who's going to pay for this? And I said, pay for what? He said, well, he's had 2 of those. That's 6 shots. I said, 6 shots? So the guy says, well, you going to pay for this? And Henry says, I don't have any money. Cost me $65. I had just met him that evening. I paid the guy $65, and I gave him $75 or whatever. I gave him a tip. I got back and said, Lisa, he just took down 6 shots. He goes, oh, well, he'll be fun the rest of the tour. And I don't even want to tell you what he did the rest of the tour. Every time this kid would say something about the mob, he said, that's bullshit. That isn't the way it happened. That's a bunch of crap. The poor kid was
wait, we can't curse, by the way. I forgot.
Get him off of here, please. Get him off the tour. Oh, man.
Well, you didn't let him drive the bus, though, right?
No, but I never got my $75 back either.
Hey, Ed.
Yeah, he was a character, but he was a nice guy. When he was sober, he was a beautiful guy.
What do you got, Danny?
I was just going to tell you that Frank's going to be starting to do, we're going to start it out probably twice a month, his own radio show, blog talk, internet show.
Hey, he'd be good.
Oh, is he? That's news to me. I didn't know that.
He's, well, we've talked about it before, and we just talked again today, and we're going to get it rolling here in the next few weeks.
Good.
And maybe you'd be willing to be a guest some night. We're going to have guests.
Definitely. I do shows all the time. We'll stay in touch. Listen, you guys, if you have anything new to promote, get a hold of me, because we'll update your page on the blog. Any new additions to the Mob Tour. 3 great guests tonight, 3 great fun guys. Denny Griffin, Robert George Allen, and Frank Cullotta from the movie Casino. Thank you, guys, and
thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Thanks a million, Ed. Appreciate it.